Welcome to the Rare Earth Exchanges podcast, where power, politics, and the world's most coveted materials collide. Rare earth elements power the backbone of tomorrow's most critical technologies. With China dominating global production, the U.S. and its allies must align strategically to ensure a stable future. This urgency prompted tech entrepreneurs Daniel O'Connor and Dustin Olson to launch Rare Earth Exchanges, a news and insight platform built to equip stakeholders and decision makers with the tools and intelligence needed to reduce dependency and build prosperous resilience. Let's get into it.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Rare Earth Exchanges podcast. You're joined by me, my co-hosts Daniel and Nishchay Chadha from ACE Clean Battery Recycling. ACE is been developing a cleaner, safer, and more scalable way to recover critical minerals from spent batteries. So turning what many people probably see into waste problems into a circular economy opportunity. So Nishchay, thank you so much for being on the show. How are you?
Very good, Dustin. Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you, Daniel, for having me here as well. It's very nice to meet the two of you. Looking forward to this conversation, actually. You guys have been doing a great job. I've seen some of your, or listened to some of your podcasts earlier as well, and really looking forward to this conversation.
Absolutely. Well, we're glad to have you here. And you're in Singapore, so we are in opposite time zones right now. So we're glad that you're making the time right now to be here. We would love to get just a kind of a quick summary about some of your background, what you're doing today. It sounds like you've spent nearly 2 decades in the mining and global commodities area before founding ACE. So we'd just love to hear a little bit about that journey, and then we'll keep going.
The moment you said 2 decades, I started feeling older. And so maybe we'll skip that part. But yeah, I've spent a decent amount of time in the industry. When we say the industry, I'm really talking broadly about metals rather than just recycling per se. I started my career as a mining engineer inside the mines. It used to be a lead, zinc, and silver mine. Very exciting operation. But the nearest grocery store was about 35 kilometers from the mine. So it was in the middle of nowhere, but great, amazing experience. So that's where I started, really in the trenches with explosives going around you in mines and, nice stuff like that. And then moved on to various roles in the mining industry, commercial roles as well, set up distribution for the company I was working for on the metal side in various Asian markets initially, and then moved on to work for a very substantial, very well respected commodity trading house who also had a recycling division. So that sort of was my introduction to the industry. Worked to build up a book in partnership, of course, with all the other team members in the company for lead and zinc. Lead, I'm not sure if you know, but for the sake of your audiences, lead is used in batteries for the longest time. It's a very stable, very nice metal. It's the most recycled product on the planet, but it has its issues. We'll talk about that, later in this conversation. So that was sort of my first introduction to the industry. I started this company in Singapore, actually 19, and we'll talk about my co-founder as well. He's been working on battery related technologies, since 2014, much ahead of when I started working on building this platform. But essentially, the idea of building ACE Green Recycling was you have mining companies, you have Glencore, you have Rio, you have Alcoa, BHPs, who have massive platforms, global companies in mining. You have in commodities, agri-commodities, you have Cargill, you have Olam, you have other such, large players. But in recycling, you don't see a global platform, but you do see a huge issue around a fragmented industry where it's really, really very important because you're creating a lot of pollution. You have a resource which you can extract to really create value. You can avoid mining related pollution, but you don't have a single platform who can integrate this very fragmented industry and then start improving this industry, both from a technological perspective, but also from a financial and supply chain perspective. So with that thought, ACE Green Recycling, or ACE Recycling at that time, was founded. So that was the whole thought process. And then later on, I, partnered with who's currently my co-founder. We partnered together in 2019. He was already running a technology company focused on creating recycling processes for batteries without creating pollution and completely avoiding the smelting process, which is a major factor behind the pollution involved in the recycling processes. Later merged our two companies and created Ace Recycling, the company you see today. So that's a very long, complicated history of the company, but yeah, we do come from the industry, and we're trying to solve the problems which the industry has been facing for a very long time.
That's great and really helpful. So, sorry, remind me, how long has Ace been around since you founded it?
So I founded it in 2019, right before COVID, and we sort of started it together. The spread of COVID started around the same time. But my co-founder, he's been at it since 2014. So if you really want to go back into time, it's been 11 years of a lot of hard work and innovation, which has gone into it. And you already told me that I've been 2 decades into this industry. So you know, it really depends on how you want to start counting.
But you still look young, so feel good
Yeah,
about that.
I have to, now that you've pointed it out. So I'm going to start working out as well.
What if I may jump in, Dustin. Listen, could you, with recycling, we look at rare earth to magnet. You're more batteries for is it batteries for electric vehicles? Is that your primary end product in this as part of this circular offering?
So, see, electric vehicles are a very small part of the whole battery sector. People are only hearing about batteries today because of EVs, but batteries have been around forever. They've been used in energy storage. You talk about, if you go back 20, 30 years when electricity wasn't easily available, you had power backup at homes as well, right? So that's where batteries were always used. They're used in all ICE engine cars. Many EVs also have a lead battery and a lithium battery. A lithium battery is replacing the engine. It's not replacing the lead battery in most cars. So batteries have been around for many, many, many decades. It's not a new phenomenon. So our focus is to recycle all of these commercially available battery types in the right way, not just electric vehicle batteries. So starting from energy storage to mobility, whether it's two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, whether you talk about mobile phones, laptops, we cover all of these segments. Today, the largest segment for us within the company is lead acid battery recycling without smelting process. And we also have technologies for lithium battery recycling. So we have technology stacks for all of these segments, but the largest number of batteries available today on the planet are actually the lead batteries. And that's something we've chosen to prioritize today, while we have technologies for all of these.
And let's talk about the lead batteries today. Uh, how many, if you look at that market, what percentage of the actual batteries come from recycled processes?
So, lead, interestingly, lead is one metal which can be recycled infinitely without losing its properties. So, therefore, a very high number of batteries in this industry come from recycled sources. Initially, in the past, many years ago, the proportion used to be around 40 odd percent. Then it increased to 50. Now it's closer to 60 plus. Depending on which country you are in, it'll be between 50 to 60% coming from recycled sources. If you are in the US, most of it comes from recycled sources. If you are in China, you are in India, a lot of it still comes from mining activities as well. It really depends on where you are. But if you take a global average, you're talking about anywhere between 60 to 70% coming from recycling, for the pure fact that it's a very recyclable material and it does not lose its properties when you recycle it. Unlike many other materials, if you talk about plastics, you talk about aluminum, they sort of lose their properties and cannot be directly used in the same process. But lead does not have that disadvantage.
That's really fascinating. So, for those who aren't engineers or overly technical, can you just quickly summarize what the non-smelting approach is
Yep.
versus other traditional recycling metals?
Yeah. So think of a smelter. The conventional process is a smelting process. What is a smelter? A smelter is essentially if you took a furnace, a very, very large furnace, and you started heating it up using a lot of fossil fuels, and you bring the temperature up to 1400 degrees, maybe 1200, maybe 13, maybe 1400 degrees, what will happen? You'll start burning the stuff. You'll start creating a lot of air emissions, and you'll also be chucking in a lot of toxic chemicals to enable the process, which ends up creating a lot of toxic waste. So you do get the recycled product out of it, but essentially you've also created a lot of pollution. What we do is we've created a process which uses organic food grade chemicals. It's a chemical process. It's a non-burning process. It operates at room temperature. The outcome of that is we get essentially the same or better quality product, but at the same time, we are not creating this pollution, which both relates to air emissions and also solid waste dumping. We do not create solid waste because we are not using the furnace process. And the only emission in the air is actually positive emission. It's pure oxygen, interestingly. And it's no magic. We are not doing any voodoo science here. But essentially, lead in a battery is in the form of oxides. A large majority of it is in the form of oxides. And because we are not burning that in a furnace, we end up releasing the oxygen in the air, and that ends up creating this positive emission. So it's really a byproduct of the process. So in a nutshell, we don't operate at very large temperatures. We do not use any fossil fuels in the process. It's a fully electrified process. And you can imagine, because we are not taking the materials to a very high temperature, the energy usage is also very low. We are operating at room temperature. So you do save on a lot of fronts, not just commercially, but also environmentally.
Thank you. That helps.
I hope
Very.
that was simple enough. I would be very happy if you allow me. I'll be very happy to share some pictures as well, maybe as part of this conversation or later, to demonstrate how the two processes look like as well in comparison. Happy to do that as well.
But that sounds amazing, though, that this recycling process basically eliminates adverse air particles and also doesn't have much in the way of solid waste. That's pretty amazing. So again, are you saying for lead, are most batteries today recycled in this clean way, or is your way novel and differentiated?
So I would say 99 point something percent of the batteries recycled today are recycled using the conventional smelting process. Now, it could be done in a highly unregulated way in certain countries and a very regulated way in other countries, but essentially the process has been smelting. There are many people, it's a problem which has existed for many decades. So, and there have been a lot of plant shutdowns in various countries because of this pollution. But people have tried to solve this problem by creating chemical processes. But we've been, fortunately for us, unfortunately for the industry, I would say it's taken too long to create a process which is pollution free or with substantially reduced pollution. And we are the only ones today with a commercialized process for lead battery recycling through organic chemical usage rather than through the smelting process. So by and large, you could say the whole industry right now, except for the customers we are working with or the recyclers we are working with right now, everybody else is using the conventional smelting process. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to transition this industry, which is very, very important. In fact, US a couple of weeks ago has declared lead as a critical metal. It was always a critical metal, but now it's been stamped as being a critical metal. So it's a very crucial industry. It needs to exist. Recyclers have always been handicapped by technology. It's not that their intention, they have all intention to do it right, but they were always handicapped by lack of technology. So now we presented the solution, and our attempt is we are not trying to compete with those guys. We're trying to say, hey, we are here to partner. We are here to help. We are here to help you transition. Our processes are very modular. So you don't need to remove your whole plant today. Let's do it step by step. So we've been helping companies try it out, transition step by step, in a very friendly and cooperative manner. And change takes time. So the short answer here is super majority of it is through smelting process, but hopefully in time it'll transition.
That's great. So with what you were just saying, you're helping other companies. So are you licensing your technology to them, or are you using it to scale your own operation?
We do a bit of both, depending on which markets we are playing in and what's the appreciation for technology and clean operations. We have partnerships in various markets, Taiwan, Armenia, Australia, for example, Thailand, India, where we are partnering with companies, licensing our technology to players to help them transition. There are a few others which I can't talk about right now, which are in the play. In North America, in Texas, we are setting up our flagship facility that will be fully using our technology end to end, pretty large facility. The plan is to set up 150,000 tons. It's in phases, of course. The first phase is being set up as we speak, and hopefully should be operational by end of 2026. So in North America, for benefit of your listeners, over the last many years, there have been multiple shutdowns of smelters. A lot of them because of pollution. There have been a lot of penalties on smelters. There have been a lot of issues around renewing those permits, and those players have the right mindset from perspective of trying to recycle this product because it's very important, but they're all handicapped by lack of technology. So our attempt here is to demonstrate it at very large scale in the US and then try and help other companies as well transition. So it's a mix of both.
On the technology, is it protected by patents or is it more of a trade secret type of situation?
It's a very interesting question. It's both. So it's patent protected, but at the same time, it's a lot of trade secrets. If you've heard of the Coca-Cola strategy, so we have a set of proprietary food grade organic chemicals which we use and without which the process does not work. It's really used in very, very tiny quantities, but that's the secret sauce. That secret sauce is protected through trade secrets. We always keep hearing about there's a trade secret formula which Coca-Cola has, which is logged in somewhere, probably in Atlanta. It's the same thing for us. I just can't say where it's logged up for us, but it's the same philosophy, I would say.
And so, if you look at it, so it sounds like, and just so I want to make sure I understand the answer to Dustin's question. So it's modular. So if there are recyclers in the United States, you can partner with them and somehow license the access to the technology. Is that no or?
Yeah, that's absolutely possible. You can go small and you can say, hey, let's install a few modules first and let's try it out, and then let's go ahead once you are more comfortable. Why not?
Okay.
That's great.
Okay.
See, that our goal here, if you look at the big picture, our goal here is not to say, hey, we want to be the only company on the planet using this. We cannot scale that way. Even if you and there's a much larger mission behind what we're trying to do. We were all, my co-founder, myself, all the other people in the company, most of us in senior management in the company, we all had great jobs, which paid great bonuses as well, much more than what we're making right now. But there was no need to wreck your life and work 24/7 and not create a very massive impact. This is an industry we really care about. We've been part of this industry for the longest time. We really want to transition this industry to the next stage. Otherwise, it'll become a dinosaur. You'll have companies who are using the old processes. They'll shut down eventually. What will you do? You need this metal. It's a very stable metal. It's really recyclable. We all know that. It's cheap. It's not very expensive as nickel, cobalt, lithium. You have to do it, but let's just do it right. So if we are not able to help other companies, then we failed in our mission.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. And just so I have an understanding of the market in let's say the United States. If we look at battery recyclers in the United States, total number of players. Any sense of that size?
Yeah, it's yeah. On the metal production side, like on the output side, it's more than 1 million tons right now. I would put, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me right now, but I would say from a battery processing perspective, it's anywhere between 1.5 to 2 million tons of batteries being processed right now. See, US transitioned to 100% recycling many years ago when they shut down the primary smelters. Primary smelters mean where you use mining related feedstock and ores and then you process them. So US is 100% on recycling for a very long time, but at the same time, you've seen a lot of shutdowns happen in US. The impact of that is at the current moment, there are hundreds of millions of dollars worth of lead scrap batteries or waste batteries being exported, some legally, some not so legally, to Asia, some to Mexico as well. And at the same time, US is forced to import lead as a metal, batteries which are like white labeled. and other materials, and that's in billions of dollars. So there's a huge gap which is increasing day by day. Unlike lithium, like in lithium, the whole value chain is being set up right now. It's not a market which is ready today for large scale facilities to be set up and recycling huge amount of batteries. But lead has this issue now. We're trying to solve this issue today, which exists where you're exporting scrap batteries, you're importing new product, and you have gap in capacity because you don't have the right technology to produce without pollution.
Interesting. Dustin?
We're obviously big fans of rare earth elements here at Rare
Sure.
Earth Exchanges, but there's a lot of similarities with the critical minerals as well. And the rare earth supply chain faces some similar issues from processing, refining, recycling, circularity. What parallels do you see from critical minerals to rare earths to batteries and so on?
Yep. There are a lot of parallels, and the name of your podcast is a giveaway. You are fans of rare earths, you know. So see, we should start looking at it from an origination perspective, I would say. Like, where all are these critical metals or rare earths? And if we club all of these materials into a single category, you have issues around where are these originating. They're originating right now from mining perspective in some very limited countries where either there are a lot of political issues associated with them from a supply chain perspective, or there are a lot of compliance issues. If you talk about, it's been talked about too many times, but it's not really been resolved. People talk about Congo, for example, right? People talk about the DRC. People say, hey, there are a lot of issues around child labor or unethical mining. Then you talk about Russia, you talk about China, and you talk about the whole trade war. You talk about India having issues with China. You have issues around US versus China. So how can you create stable supply chains for these very important materials to advance the civilization? Right now, on one hand, we are talking about AI and data centers creating a lot of storage infrastructure worldwide. Every country is trying to do it. US is trying to do it on its own. China is trying to do it on its own, and India, Europe. And it's very important. All of these regions have to create their own local infrastructure to support their own population. So you need localized supply chains. But at the same time, the origin of these materials is concentrated in some very limited hands. So that's a huge parallel. From a policy perspective, all of these major regions, they're trying to control the flow of these materials and trying to create domestic supply chains. So again, there are parallels between rares and critical materials. Unlike plastics, for example, plastics, everyone was trying to ship the waste away, right? If you talk about Europe for the longest time was shipping waste to Malaysia, Philippines, and Indonesia and Vietnam, and until news broke and there was a huge hue and cry. But in metals, people are actually trying to retain these materials, whether it's magnets, whether it's lead, whether it's lithium, whether it's copper. Countries are saying, hey, we don't want you to take these resources because we can't create new mines overnight. The average time from start to finish a new mining asset takes to scale up production, it's about 15 to 20 years in any country. Do we have that luxury of time? We don't. So the rationale always is, let's try and create, circularity can be a very complicated discussion. Like, what exactly do you call circularity? Whether you include refining, whether you talk about everything in the whole value chain. But creating domestic supply chains is of utmost importance. And that's true whether you talk about rares or you talk about critical materials. It's true in both of these cases.
100%.
And that can only come from mining or recycling, if you want to say that.
So if we look at the critical mineral, or particularly the rare earth element supply chain, which is not a critical mineral, it's a different category. There's 17, I believe, rare earth elements, and nearly all of them are processed in China, over 90%. Okay. Is it similar with batteries, whether it's lead or others? Are the Chinese the leaders in recycling these products?
Thankfully, not so much in lead, because lead, as we talked about it, it's been hugely recycled, and therefore most countries have their own supply chains. The net inflow of new batteries is still, in the US at least, there's a lot of inflow from Asia. I'll not just say China. It comes from India, it comes from Korea, it comes from Japan as well. So there's still a net import, but most of these countries do have very well set up supply chains, which are very well established. That's not the case in lithium. As we all know, lithium, of course, China controls the market. They were the ones who really created this market. So, of course, they control this market at least for the next few years, while US, India, Europe, they try and create supply chains and try and cross all these regulatory hurdles, which they've created themselves over the last many, many years. Lithium is a different topic altogether, where China is the leader worldwide and all other countries are catching up. But lead has very well formed domestic supply chains already.
Interesting.
That's fantastic. Aligns with a lot of what we talk about here at Rare Earth Exchanges. So, can we talk just a little bit about how policy frameworks in the US, India, Southeast Asia are shaping the growth in customer demand? Kind of you alluded to some of that. Like, it sounds like it is changing, evolving to make way for that. But what are your thoughts? Is it going fast enough? Is it, what do you
See,
think?
if you ask any entrepreneur, regulations are never moving fast enough as they would like. So my answer would definitely be no, it's not moving fast enough. But from a practical standpoint, all governments or all regions you talked about, they're all working towards creating these domestic supply chains and they're all trying to create these policy frameworks. Now, the real question is, yes, fine, you're creating this policy, but is it being implemented from a practical standpoint? So during the previous administration in the US, for instance, you had IRA, and IRA doled out a lot of money to very many companies, right? For creating new batteries. And this was more on lithium, not so much on lead, but a lot of money was spent, taxpayer money was spent in promoting, setting up very large infrastructure, very large plants, and there were grants, there were loans. A lot of money was spent. Did it end up creating an actual supply chain? It's very questionable because most of this material which was collected and processed by these companies who use taxpayer dollars without using any names, they ended up in China again. So, because there was no refining capacity, there was no consumption within the US. So, yes, there was policy, there was also money given out, but there was lack of intention from the users of that money, and there was a lack of consumption or complete setup of the whole value chain within the country. So, while the intention was right, the policy was in the right direction, but the government did not do enough to block the outflow of these intermediates which were created using that money, and it still ended up in China, whether it was through Thailand, Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia. That's a different topic. It did end up in China. That's the bottom line. So yes, countries are working on policy. Like India recently has come up with this critical materials policy where they are supporting setting up of infrastructure for rare earths and battery recycling, and they're giving out grants and subsidies. But when you go into the nitty-gritties of that policy, I think there's still a lot of work which needs to be done. We've been reviewing that as well. We do believe there needs to be a lot more done. Europe, again, I think they have to pull up their socks and work on their speed. Maybe I'm being too direct here, but the lack of speed, maybe it's just it's a beautiful landscape, and people like to work at their own pace. That's true. We all enjoy going there for holidays, but you can't always be on holidays. You know, you need to you need to speed up and advance with the rest of the world. Otherwise, you'll just keep having these forums and keep talking about climate change, but really not create a dent because, fine, you can talk about policy, but implementation is a big issue. They need to speed up on the permitting side as well. Permits take the longest time in Europe. For us, we've been focused a lot on the US market because for all the faults or policies you can talk about in US, whether it's the Biden administration or the Trump administration, but all of them have been very pro supporting critical materials, and therefore the speed of execution is at least fast. They might be doing things right or they might be doing things wrong, but at least there's an intention and there's speed. Europe, forget about it. We'll have another podcast and you'll be saying, hey, you've been in the industry 3 decades, Nishchay. You're trying to set up a plant in Europe.
This is fascinating. Are you saying that perhaps North America will move faster with supporting facilities for recycling?
I do think so. I do believe that. I think North America is moving in the right direction. The current administration also has been very focused on creating domestic supply chains of critical metals. I do see speed of execution in the US being the fastest. Other countries, of course, China, you can't beat China. China, they can just decide tomorrow. Before you blink, you'll see a factory being set up there, right? So, but outside of China, I would say US is moving pretty fast, and that's really good to see.
Yes, for
That's
sure.
great.
And they have a lot of catching up to do anyways. So it makes sense to move fast.
So from a market perspective, I looked at your website. You're in India and in Singapore today, right?
So Singapore, we don't have a plant. We have a regional HQ in Singapore, but we have a plant in India. We have in Taiwan. We're working on the expansion of that Taiwan plant right now. As we speak, the equipment are being shipped for the expansion today, actually. And we have an upcoming plant in Armenia, which is under setup right now. It's under commissioning and shipment of equipment as we speak. There's an upcoming facility in Australia, Thailand as well in the next quarter. These are all facilities which we are licensing to partners, to existing recyclers, except for a lithium plant in India, which is our own plant. Everything else is where we've licensed our technology. North America, Texas is our own facility. It's a couple of hours from Houston. So that's basically our flagship facility.
It's really impressive, Nishchay. You folks you're growing fast. It feels like it's a good time. There's demand and a recognition that you're bringing real value.
Yeah, that's true. But I would say not fast enough because the market is huge. The problem we are trying to solve is huge. And there are new problems coming which we would like to solve. We definitely have to solve the lithium problem, but now in the near future, you'll have problems. You have problems around mine tailings, for example. All these mines which have huge mountains of waste which needs to be solved for. You need to extract materials there. You'll have nuclear waste related problems as well with all these, some mini nuclear power plants coming. So there are a lot of problems which are coming.
Yeah.
So we would want to deploy and work on the current problem statement as fast as possible, and then also add. We like to be busy, so we would want to be solving new problems as well.
And so, just if I may, I know we're getting towards the end, but if you look at your organization, the company and how it's organized, do you have a research and development division for these to solve these problems?
Absolutely. My co-founder, he's a scientist himself, Dr. Vipin Tyagi, and he's based in the US for the last 25 years now. He runs a team of some very accomplished PhDs who worked in US, who worked in China, who worked in India, not just on battery materials, but on a lot of other metals. One of our scientists, he was working on LFP batteries, which are in vogue now, but 15 years ago, and another guy who's worked on nuclear waste in the past. So very strong, very diverse team which he runs, and we want to continue solving problems. We getting new problem statements. We are focused very much on batteries and lead batteries and lithium batteries at the moment, but we want to continue to innovate. See, on a very high level, if you see what is a company, the company right now is a combination of people who are great technologists and also people who come from the industry. People who come from the industry, not just myself, plenty of my other colleagues, they've spent decades in the industry doing operations. We've hired a very senior resource a few weeks ago who was running the largest battery recycling operation in the United States. So him, a lot of other people have a lot of history in operations. Then we have people who've spent decades in supply chains globally, not just the US, Asia, Europe, Africa. We have people who really understand metal and recycling supply chain. We have this exposure and knowledge base in-house where we know how supply chains work, how recycling works, how the metal industry and the mining industry works, and how technology works. So that's our skill set. Today it's being used in batteries, tomorrow it'll be used in something else. So when you tell me you're growing fast, I would always say not fast enough because we have plenty of problems ahead of ourselves.
Got it. I got you. No, it sounds great, and it sounds like an incredible potential.
Thank you so much.
Any other last minute questions as we get close towards the top of the hour?
Yep. Just one more question, a quick one. So summarize, what's the most misunderstood thing about battery recycling?
So there are a lot of misunderstood things. First of all, people say, and I keep hearing this misinformation that 90% of batteries end up in landfills. That's just completely untrue. That's just false, because batteries have so much of metal, which is expensive stuff in them. Nobody throws it in a landfill. You know, people, even if it goes to a landfill, there are people who extract it from there. So batteries do not end up in landfills, a large majority of it. You just don't read about it because a lot of it ends up in unorganized sector. So you don't read it in stats from publications because they don't have access to the actual recycled content. The fact is, almost all batteries are recycled. Some of them are recycled properly. A lot of them are recycled not so properly and in a very pollutive manner. And you just read that they go to the landfill. They don't. So that's one. So the real issue is not are they recycled or not, or can they be recycled or not? The real issue is how do you recycle them in a manner which is not creating another problem of pollution. So you're trying to solve one problem by recycling, but you're creating another problem by recycling it in the wrong manner. So that's the key thing. Can you recycle it using the right processes, creating transparency in the supply chain, and creating proper infrastructure so that your people who are working in that ecosystem and people who are living around that ecosystem are being taken care of. That's it.
That's great. And I never probably would have thought of that assumption that batteries just end up in landfills. So thanks. Nishchay, if people want to connect with you, want to follow ACE into the future, where should they go?
All my contact details are publicly available. So anyone can Google me, reach out on LinkedIn. There's an email which is mentioned on our website. All those emails land up in my inbox. So, I'm very keen on connecting with people in the industry and outside the industry as well. So more than happy to engage. No problem. We are an open book. We are here to work with people. We are here to partner with people.
That's great. Thank you. Nishchay, we appreciate you so much being on the podcast to talk about your business and the things that you guys are doing to make for a healthier, cleaner world that we all live in by recycling batteries the right way. Hopefully we have you again on the show to give us an update. Maybe it'll be 2.5 decades in the industry. Hopefully it won't be 3 by the time we talk again. But we'll see. So Nishchay, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dustin. Thank you, Daniel. It's been a pleasure being on your podcast. Thank you so much for your time.
Likewise.